Greetings, dearest remnant. May Yahuah's blessing and protection be with each and every one of you. We pray that those of you who are not redeemed seek deliverance and accept faith in Yeshua and the truth of Yahuah's Torah. Remember, Yeshua said, I came to fulfill the Torah, not to destroy it. Time is short, for as prophesied in 4 Ezra chapter 16 verse 52, for yet a little, and iniquity shall be taken away out of the earth, and righteousness shall reign. Bible references Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5 and 6, Matthew 5:17 and 4 Ezra 16. Amen and hallelujah. And so the title of this video, dear remnant, is Jubilees 23, the sword, war, and restoration to Eden. So why is this the title of this video? Well, let me explain a little bit about that. The book of Jubilees is an apocryphal book, which means it was removed from the biblical canon by the church fathers at the beginning of the little season of Satan. It was, of course, removed because it prophesies judgments for our time, and the powers that be don't want us to know about those judgments. I've shared some verses from this book with you in previous videos concerning Yahuah's 364-day calendar. Again, that was hidden from us. And also about Mount Zion, Yahuah's abode, being situated in the navel of the earth, which is the North Pole. So these are all facts which they don't want us to know about. So they removed these books and called them the Apocrypha, meaning books which are of doubtful scriptural value. And everyone just believes them because, of course, they had erased the memory of the past. And we'll talk more about that. And the title, which is Jubilees 23, the sword, war, and restoration to Eden, relates to how they brought about that memory wipe. Okay? So I want you to be aware, dear remnant, that this teaching is going to be a tough lesson for all of us. And I will share with you some timestamps which make it very clear that Jubilees chapter 23 is a prophecy for our generation. This chapter reveals truths about a number of things which have been hidden from us. For example, it reveals the truth about the sharp decrease in the numbers of years that we live. It reveals the truth about the real reason for the wars of the 19th century and the 2 world wars of the 20th century. And it also reveals the truth, dear remnant, that the Torah is a salvation issue. So those are all issues that will be discussed in this video. Let's start from the beginning of Jubilees chapter 23. This chapter opens with the death of Abraham, his burial, and 40 days of mourning. As always, I use the Sefer Bible, which contains all the apocryphal books. If you watch this video until the end, you'll be rewarded with profound insights of the prophecies that are unfolding in our time and what we can expect to happen. Okay? So yes, I will actually be reading through all of Jubilees 23 and then providing you with my commentaries as well. On some of, as I go through some verses, I'll stop and then I'll give you my commentary. Okay? And so Jubilees chapter 23 starts. And he, Abraham, placed 2 fingers of Yaakov on his eyes, and he blessed the Elohim of Elohim. And he covered his face and stretched out his feet and slept the sleep of eternity, and was gathered to his fathers. And notwithstanding all this, Yaakov was lying in his bosom, and knew that Abraham, his father's father, was dead. And Yaakov awoke from his sleep, and behold, Abraham was cold as ice, and he said, Father, Father. But Father, Father, but there was none that spoke. And he knew that Abraham was dead. And Yaakov arose from Abraham's bosom, and ran and told Rivkah, who is Rebekah, his mother. And Rivkah went to Yitzhak, Isaac, in the night, and told him. And they went together, and Yaakov with them. And a lamp was in his hand. And when they had gone in, they found Abraham lying dead. And Yitzhak fell on the face of his father, and wept, and kissed him. And the voices were heard in the house of Abraham. And Ishmael his son arose, and went to Abraham his father, and wept over Abraham his father, he and all the house of Abraham. And they wept with a great weeping. And his sons Yitzhak and Ishmael buried him in the double cave near Sarah his woman. And they wept for him 40 days, all the men of his house. And Yitzhak and Ishmael and all their sons, and all the sons of Keturah in their places. And the days of weeping for Abraham were ended. And so I just want to say here that after the time of mourning, the prophecy about the future of Abraham's progeny begins. That is, his descendants. The focus of the prophecy in Jubilees 23 is the decrease in the numbers of years that humanity lives. Listen carefully, dear remnant. Be patient to listen to this video until the end, because it's important for you to learn the reasons for the decrease in our years. Keep in mind that one Jubilee is 50 years. Okay, not everyone knows that, but I think a lot of you who have been really searching for the truth have learned that a Jubilee is 50 years. Okay, so continuing with Jubilee chapter 23, verse 8. And he, Abraham, lived 3 Jubilees and 4 weeks of years, 175 years, and completed the days of his life, being old and full of days. For the days of the forefathers of their life were 19 Jubilees. That is, of course, about 1,000 years. Okay? And after the flood, they began to grow less than 19 Jubilees, and to decrease in Jubilees, and to grow old quickly, and to be full of their days by reason of manifold tribulation, and the wickedness of their ways, with the exception of Abraham. For Abraham was perfect in all his deeds with Yahuah, and well-pleasing in righteousness all the days of his life. And behold, he did not complete 4 Jubilees in his life, when he had grown old, by reason of the wickedness, and was full of his days. So Abraham, he didn't live 200 years. He lived 175 years. So his years were decreasing already. Okay? So that, of course, is after the flood, when the years of the children of men begin to decrease. And so continuing with Jubilees 23, verse 11. And all the generations which shall arise from this time until the day of the great judgment shall grow old quickly, before they complete 2 Jubilees, and their knowledge shall forsake them by reason of their old age, and all their knowledge shall vanish away. Okay, that's very important information, dear remnant. And so continuing with verse 12. And in those days, if a man live a jubilee and a half of years, they shall say regarding him, he has lived long, and the greater part of his days are pain and sorrow and tribulation, and there is no peace. For calamity follows on calamity, and wound on wound, and tribulation on tribulation, and evil report on evil report, and illness on illness, and all evil judgments such as these, one with another, illness and overthrow, and snow and frost and ice, and fever and chills and torpor, and famine and death and sword and captivity, and all kinds of calamities and pains. And all these shall come on an evil generation, which transgresses on the earth. Their works are uncleanness and fornication, and pollution and abominations. Then they shall say, the days of the forefathers were many, even to 1,000 years, and were good. But behold, the days of our life, if a man has lived many, are 80 years and 10. Okay, 80 years are 60 years. Okay, and if you add 10, of course, that's 70. Okay, so in the days of our life, and now we're talking about really our generation, if a man has lived many, are 80 years and 10. And if he is strong, 80 years, and those evil, and there is no peace in the days of this evil generation. That is the generation that is being prophesied about in these verses. So let me just give you my commentary on what we've just read. Jubilees 23 verse 8 to 10, which I've just read to you, tells us that before the flood, they lived 19 Jubilees, which again is nearly 1,000 years. However, Abraham, who lived after the flood, lived more than the 120 years designated for humanity by Yahweh. As it is written, after the flood, humanity began to live less than 1,000 years. Important to note here that there was a transition, not a sudden moment of change from 1,000 years to 120 years. And after that, a decrease to even less than 2 Jubilees or 100 years according to the book of Jubilees. Yahweh ordained that all generations after the time of Abraham, and that is in Jubilees chapter 23 verse 11, until the great judgment shall be less than 2 Jubilees. Okay? And that is true. We can see that for our time. This prophecy has already been fulfilled then, isn't it, dear Robert? No wonder the book of Jubilees was left out of the biblical canon. Satan's plan was to fool us into believing that old age is about 70 years old, and that's perfectly normal. The Bible is a myth. Most people have been raised to believe that the Bible is false. It's a myth. It's not real. So don't believe anything they tell you about people living to 1,000 years. Okay, that wasn't true. Well, it is true, dear remnant, okay? But because of all the falsity that we have been indoctrinated into through the education system, we think that living to 70 years is normal. That's old age, okay? So Jubilees had to be hidden so that we wouldn't know that death before 100 years is actually a judgment of Yahweh upon this evil generation in which we live. So the lies that modern medicine keeps us healthy and extends our lives, that prevails. Truth is, our lives are short because there is a judgment on humanity. Modern medicine, controlled by the bloodline families, the Nephilim, is Satan's instrument of control. It's designed to, medical system is designed to inject us with poison and parasites that make us dependent on their poisonous medicine and ultimately shortens our lives. They inject us with the disease and then give us a kind of band-aid type of cure, which doesn't really cure, but which actually causes side effects, which then keep us dependent on the medical system. Jubilees prophesied that by reason of their old age, knowledge shall forsake them, all their knowledge shall vanish away. Senility was prophesied in the Bible. It is not a natural part of the aging process. It is a generational curse, a punishment on the children of men, a tribulation upon humanity because of wickedness. We, dear remnant, have a judgment upon us in this generation to live barely more than 75 years. Indeed, as prophesied, 75 is the average age of modern advanced humanity. That makes it obvious that humanity never evolved from the Stone Age to the present. Modern medicine has not rescued us from early death. Wasn't the Stone Age before the flood? That was a time when humanity lived 19 Jubilees, which was about 1,000 years, right? And yet now we have modern medicine, but we barely live 75 years on average, and actually that has been decreasing, as I will talk about a little later on. Also, as prophesied, most of us think about life with regret, that the days of our lives are mostly pain and sorrow, and that's especially true of the past 5 years. Also, as prophesied, if a man lives 70 years or 70 years, we say he lived many years. And if he lives 80 or 80 years, we do indeed marvel at how strong he is. And yet, we all know that the days have been evil and without peace. Okay, so now continuing with Jubilees chapter 23, verse 16. And in that generation, the sons shall convict their fathers and their elders of sin and unrighteousness, and of the words of their mouth, and the great wickedness which they perpetrate, and concerning their forsaking the covenant which Yahweh made between them and him, that they should observe and do all his commandments and his ordinances, and all his Torah, without departing from it, either to the right or to the left. And so, let me go over my commentary on that portion, dear remnant. These verses of Jubilees 23, verse 16 to 18, that I just shared with you are very important. It said very clearly that the sons convicted their fathers of departing from the covenant made with Yahuah to observe the ordinances and Torah, and not depart to the right or the left. The sons, dear remnant, who are they? Well, they are Christians who followed the Torah and who convicted their fathers for departing from the covenant. When did this happen? Or is it still an unfulfilled prophecy? I believe that this rift between the sons and fathers prophesied the events of World War I and World War II, as I will elaborate on shortly. It is very clear, dear remnant, that the decrease in years of our lives is a judgment on the generations of the little season of Satan. The numbers of years of the generations have been decreasing, and now in our time, we barely live 75 years. In the past 5 years, with all the young who have died suddenly, dying of heart attacks, global life expectancy has undoubtedly plunged even further. The reduction of our years is now around 70 years, possibly less more than likely even around 60 years by now. Dear remnant, this is a judgment upon our fathers and upon us for forsaking the covenant, the Torah, which Yahuwah originally ordained, it is a judgment upon us for forsaking the covenant and the Torah Yahweh originally ordained 120 years after the flood. But due to subsequent judgment, the years of the children of men decreased to a mere 70 years. The judgment of humanity of reduced years on account of forsaking the covenant is very clear evidence that keeping the commandments, including the Sabbath and feasts, is an ordinance required of all generations, even though we are living after the life, death, and resurrection of Yeshua. Christians have been lied to that the Sabbath feasts and ordinances were Jewish tradition, not required of them because Jesus had already come, as they say. That is not true. Humanity is under judgment today for forsaking the covenant, dear remnant. Remnant restoration in this age of righteousness, which has begun, as I said in previous videos, in late September around the 27th. Okay, remnant restoration in this age of righteousness is not merely about the restoration of bodies genetically to the DNA Yahuwah gave us and to restore our health. It is most importantly restoration of our covenant relationship with Yahweh. Due to that transgression, humanity has been judged with a reduction in the number of years and with premature senility. So, dear remnant, let's continue reading from Jubilees 23, continuing with verse 17. For all have done evil, and every mouth speaks iniquity, and all their works are uncleanness and an abomination, and all their ways are pollution, uncleanness, and destruction. Behold, the earth shall be destroyed on account of all their works, and there shall be no seed of the vine and no oil, for their works are altogether faithless, and they shall perish together, beasts and cattle and birds, and all the fish of the sea, on account of the children of men. And they shall strive one with another, the young with the old, and the old with the young, the poor with the rich, and the lowly with the great, and the beggar with the prince, on account of the Torah and the covenant. For they have forgotten commandment and covenant, and feasts and months, and Shabbats and Jubilees, and all judgments. Verse 18 and 19 are very clear that the reason for the judgment to destroy the earth is because the fathers had forgotten the commandments, the covenant, the feasts, months, and Shabbats, and Jubilees, and all judgments. That is, they forgot how they had been judged by Yahuwah, and they certainly didn't pass the information on to their children, who don't even know that they're living in judgment. That's us, dear remnant. We don't know that we're living in judgment with regard to the shortness of our lives. Okay? This prophecy is the time period of the little season of Satan, dear remnant, and I will provide timestamps that verify that this prophecy is concerning the little season of Satan. Indeed, we have been lied to, or forgot that senility is a judgment. We have been lied to that senility was our natural state at age 65 or 70, and that we die around age 75 of old age. I discern from reading this prophecy that even the deception we have faced in Satan's little season is a judgment upon this generation for forsaking the covenant. Well, how can that be? Well, I believe that there must have been a point in time, possibly towards the end of Yeshua's millennial reign, dear remnant, when our forefathers who are living at that time knowingly and willfully refused to keep the covenant, and that transgression passed on to us. So we inherited the lie that we do not need to keep the covenant, that it is nothing but the Old Testament. That is why, as Jubilees 15 prophesied, that is Jubilees chapter 23 verse 15 prophesied, in this generation that has endured the little season, we are aged and becoming senile at 70 years. The prophecy tells us, the sons shall convict their fathers and their elders of sin and unrighteousness, and of the words of their mouth, and the great wickedness which they perpetrate concerning their forsaking the covenant, which Yahuwah made between them and him. And they shall stand swords and war to turn them back into the way. That is, the sons will try and turn their fathers back to the way of the Torah by standing swords and war against their fathers. Okay? But they, that is the fathers, shall not return until much blood has been shed on the earth, one by another. And those who have escaped shall not return from their wickedness to the way of righteousness, which means that the fathers did not return back to the way of righteousness. But they shall all exalt themselves to deceit and wealth, that they may each take all that is his neighbor's. And they shall name the great name, but not in truth, and not in righteousness. And they shall defile the Holy of Holies with their uncleanness, and the corruption of their pollution. And a great punishment shall befall the deeds of this generation from Yahuwah, that he will give them over to the sword, and to judgment, and to captivity, and to be plundered and devoured. And he will wake up against them the sinners of the other nations, who have neither mercy nor compassion, and who shall respect the person of none, neither old nor young, nor anyone, for they are more wicked and strong to do evil than all the children of men. And they shall use violence against Yisrael, and transgression against Yaakov, and much blood shall be shed upon the earth, and there shall be none to gather, and none to bury. And so reference to Yaakov and Yasharel is talking about the persecution that will be done upon those who are trying to turn back to the ways of righteousness, to turn back to the way of Yahuwah, to the Torah. Okay? So there shall be none to gather, and none to bury. In those days they shall cry aloud, and call and pray, that they may be saved from the hand of the sinners, the other nations, but none shall be saved. And the nations, let me go back here. In those days they shall cry aloud, and call and pray that they may be saved from the hand of the sinners, the other nations, but none shall be saved. And the heads of the children shall be white with gray hair, and a child of 3 weeks shall appear old like a man of 100 years, and their stature shall be destroyed by tribulation and oppression. Oh, dear remnant, that prophecy in Jubilees 23, verse 20 to 25, is indeed heartbreaking. I do believe, dear remnant, that Jubilees 23, verse 20 to 21, where it is written, "And they shall stand swords and war to turn them back into the way," This is referring to the sons who convicted their fathers of forsaking the covenant. They fought against their fathers to turn them back to the way of Yahuwah's Torah, meaning the powers that controlled the world when the millennial reign ended and who perpetrated lies about the covenant with a form of Christianity that rejected the Torah. These powers are the fathers whom the sons convicted. So the fathers of the Freemasons, the so-called Illuminati, who are in league with the bloodline families, the Nephilim, and the fallen angels. These are the other nations, the sinners, that Yahuwah turned this generation over to. Okay? This prophecy tells us that the sons stood swords and war against their fathers to turn their fathers back to the way of the covenant, and that those who escaped did not return from their wickedness, but instead they exalted themselves to deceit and wealth and plundered the earth and named the great name, meaning they named Yahuwah, Yeshua HaMashiach, but not in truth, just as written in Jubilees 23 verse 21. And they defiled the Holy of Holies with their uncleanness and the corruption of their pollution, which of course is an abomination that makes desolation in this generation. Okay, that is the way in which the abomination that makes desolation manifested in this generation. Okay, this was a prophecy that the victors of the wars between the sons and the fathers would be the wicked fathers, the Freemasons, who followed the occult practices of the bloodline families, the Nephilim, and the fallen angels. I believe that the wars prophesied in Jubilees 23 were already fulfilled during the time of the wars and conflicts that devastated the world for most of the 19th century until World War I and World War II. These wars were not fought over the issues reported in our history books. These were wars about the final destruction of all knowledge and memory of the past, of the millennial reign. Okay, so they were designed to completely obliterate all memory and knowledge that Yeshua's millennial reign had happened. Okay, the millennial reign was, of course, a time when the entire world followed the ways of Yahuwah. There were those who resisted, and these are the fathers. Okay, these are our fathers, going back to that time, the forefathers who rejected the Torah. Okay, and who then faced a judgment together, which was passed on to their children or descendants, that is us. Okay, the judgment being that the numbers of years of life would be decreased. Okay, and so these wars, World War I and World War II, were wars about the final destruction of all knowledge and memory of the past. Okay, and this is why many Christians are astounded that in the book of Ezekiel, the Torah is observed during the millennial reign of Yeshua. Okay? Christians can't make sense of why that is. Why is the Torah being followed during the millennial reign? Okay, and they wonder about that because they have been trained to believe that the Torah is a Jewish tradition. Now, of course, to cover up the truth, Christian leaders resort to lying that during the millennial reign, it is the Jews who practiced Torah because they rejected Yeshua. Okay, that is what I was even taught in the days when I was following conventional Christianity. Why are the Jews following Torah in the millennial reign? Well, because they reject Yeshua, and because they reject Yeshua, they have to follow the law during the millennial reign of Yeshua. Okay, and that is, of course, not the case. Okay? Jubilees is very clear that it is on account of forsaking the Torah that there is strife and conflict amongst the children of men in our generation. The old with the young, the poor with the rich, the lowly with the great. Okay? Because the division is between those who have forgotten the commandment and those who remember it and want to practice it. Okay? So this brings about a judgment. And the judgment is not only a decree concerning a reduction in the number of years, but it is also a judgment that the earth itself will be destroyed on account of the wickedness of the children of men. And that is Jubilees 23, verse 18. Indeed, as prophesied by Peter in the renewed covenant, okay, and I call it the renewed covenant, not the New Testament, because there isn't a new and an old. There is a covenant and a renewed covenant, not an Old Testament and a New Testament. The old portion in reference to the original books or the first books is what has given people this impression that the covenant is a thing that is old, no longer valid today. Okay, it has created a prejudice in our minds, and that is something which is very, very difficult to undo in the belief system of Christians today. Okay, so as the descendants of the sons who strove with their fathers during World War I and World War II, we had no idea about the Torah. Okay, because the sons who strove with the fathers lost the battle. I do plan to do some videos about World War I and World War II. One of the things that stand out is just how many young men were sent to their death in those wars. So these were the young dying in millions. And there's so much more. The Holocaust, the gulags, what was really happening? Wars of colonization. What was really happening globally during that time? Why was there so much fighting during that time? Okay? How could the whole world have been just in total disagreement during that time? Okay? Well, it's centered around the Torah and the struggle between the ways of the Freemason fathers and the sons who knew the truth and who wanted to return to the ways of righteousness at that time. Okay? And so, dear remnant, we know, and I think in reading these verses of Jubilees, it's clear that this prophecy is about our time. Okay? We are the generation who barely lived 70 years. Okay? We know this is not a prophecy about the generation that lived prior to the millennial reign of Yeshua, because prior to the millennial reign of Yeshua, which is around 70 AD, there was no strife between sons and fathers over the Torah, resulting in swords and war. Okay? The fathers were not forsaking and breaking the covenant during that time. Okay? Prior to the millennial reign, there was definitely disagreement amongst Christian Jews and Gentiles about the circumcision, whether all were required to keep the feast days. And of course, there was strife and conflict between the Jewish leadership and those who chose to follow Yeshua. But it wasn't a divide, based on age. Okay? There was definitely a split around the divinity of Yeshua and around the practice of Torah amongst Christians. But that is not what is being described in the book of Jubilees. Okay? There is no historical record of the events of Jubilees 23, verse 25, in the time before the millennial reign. Okay? Well, what is written in Jubilees 23, verse 25? Jubilees 23, verse 25. Okay? It says, "And the heads of the children shall be white with gray hair, and a child of 3 weeks shall appear old like a man of 100 years, and their stature shall be destroyed by tribulation and oppression." Okay, so this is part of the prophecy in Jubilees 23. That is not a prophecy that applied in the time prior to the millennial reign of Yeshua. Okay, so the whole issue of the relevance of the Torah to our generation is very clear. Okay, it's not a thing of the past. It's not an old covenant. This prophecy applies to our generation. Okay, included in this time is the whole issue of the state of the children, which, as I mentioned in a previous video, the state of the children is always a very clear sign of the state of the society, the state of the nation, and also a very clear sign that the very end has come. Okay? So that, of course, is also an extremely disheartening prophecy, to think that it was prophesied in the book of Jubilees that in our time the heads of the children would be white with gray hair, that a child of 3 weeks would appear old like a man of 100 years, that stature would be destroyed by tribulation and oppression. This is just heartbreaking, and it's a timestamp for our generation. And here's the evidence. In our time, there is a condition known as Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome, supposedly a rare genetic disorder with symptoms of wrinkled skin, hair loss, heart problems, with life expectancy 15 years. A related condition, Weidmann-Rautenstrauch syndrome, starts in the womb with symptoms of aging apparent at birth. Dear remnant, I remember hearing about these conditions about 20 years ago. These clearly are fulfillment of the prophecy in Jubilee chapter 23, verse 25. That the stature of children is destroyed by tribulation and oppression. Additionally, concerning the destruction of the stature of our children, consider the obesity, diabetes, cancer rates amongst children today, not to mention youth deaths, the death of our youth and young people by heart attacks, which clearly result from the recent genetic procedures. This prophecy is about our time, dear remnant. That is very, very clear. Okay? The vast majority of the followers of Yeshua during the time leading up to Armageddon, which of course was before the millennial reign, they kept the commandments, ordinances, and the Torah. Of course, you had the scribes and the Pharisees and the old guard of Judaism, who of course kept the Torah, but they rejected Yeshua. Okay? Judaization of the feasts is a hallmark of Christian practice in this little season that we lived through. Okay? It is over now. However, it's not over in a day where you have a complete marked departure from the little season to the age of righteousness. We're in transition, dear remnant. Concerning the modern Jews who appear to be keeping the Torah, they reject redemption through Mashiach, as we all know. Now, of course, there are modern Jews who are followers of Yeshua. They're Messianic Jews. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about those who their faith is Judaism and they keep the Torah. Okay, but not all of them are the same people Yahuwah set apart in the time of Abraham. Most of us know by now that modern Israel is a creation of the Rothschilds. We also know that the restoration of Israel as a nation is not prophesied in the Holy Scriptures. Okay? They misinterpreted biblical prophecy in order to justify and to cause Christians to believe that the restoration of Israel is fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Okay? During Yeshua's millennial reign, the saints were in eternal glorified bodies. The human population lived in a healthful environment, and cathedrals were worship and healing centers. I would imagine, dear remnant, that the people of that time lived well past 70 years. Okay, that was during the millennial reign. The decrease in years to 75 was a judgment of Yahuwah upon the generation that survived into the millennial reign. Okay? In the little season of Satan, there are those who follow occult practices of the bloodline families who are reptilian and have other DNA. Okay? These are likely the ones spoken of in Jubilees verse 23, where it is written that Yahweh would wake up against this generation the sinners of the other nations, who have neither mercy nor compassion, respecting neither old nor young. And so we witness child sex trafficking, forced mRNA vaccinations, contamination of our food with mRNA and other poisons, contamination of our water and air, enforced transhumanism. That is why all of these things are being done to us, which many of us can't really understand. Which human beings would be doing that to other human beings? Well, it's because other nations have been turned loose on us due to the wickedness of this generation, due to our forefathers forsaking the covenant at the end of Yeshua's millennial reign. So the survivors that lived into the little season of Satan are the ones who didn't go with Yeshua to his domain, his abode, which is holy city Jerusalem. They didn't go with him to that location, which I believe is the North Pole, the inner earth city. Okay? They stayed and they rejected the Torah, they rejected the covenant. Thereby they were cursed, and that curse was passed on to us. And so then we have this division in our generation, at least the generation that was living during the time of the wars of the 19th century and the First and Second World Wars of the 20th century. The sons who now remembered were supposed to be following Torah. They fought. And the fathers pretty much overcame them. The fathers won. The Freemasons, the ones who control the world. Okay? So that is where we are today, dear remnant. And so, dear remnant, I just want to share with you that having discerned these meanings in Jubilees 23 by the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, I am in awe, because when I started the script for this video, I had no idea that I would be discerning a lot of what I've been sharing with you. Yahuwah opened my heart to this as I read through the chapter and looked deeply at the prophecy and gave me an understanding of it. So I'm really in awe of the deep meanings that are hidden, or that have been hidden, in Jubilees 23. Yeah, and so as I mentioned, what is apparent based on everything that I was reading in Jubilees 23 and my understanding of history, and as I've been researching, doing research about the wars of the 19th and 20th century, and as I've tried to understand how we transitioned from the millennial reign into the little season of Satan, I was really thinking to myself, who is it that actually survived into the little season? I mean, who would want to be here during the little season? Who would want to be deceived by Satan? Well, it's simply those, I do believe, who rejected Yeshua, okay? I believe that it's possible that those who survived into the little season are the ones who chose to reject the Torah even during Yeshua's millennial reign. Okay? They chose not to leave the world with Yeshua when the millennial reign ended. And they made a decision not to tell their descendants, their children, okay, that's us, about the millennial reign. They decided to cover it up. Okay? So that is why when by the mid-19th century, the sons discovered the truth, okay, they convicted their fathers and their elders of sin and unrighteousness, okay, and of forsaking the covenant which Yahuwah made between our forefathers and him, okay, which they should have been observing, okay. And so by opposing the sons and fathers in the prophecy, Jubilees is revealing to us how that transition from the millennial reign to the little season came about. Is revealing to us who even wanted to be here. Well, these are the ones who rejected the covenant, the Torah. But we, their descendants, the sons, the children, we are discovering the truth. But we are under the judgment, the curse of having our years decreased. And that is why the book of Jubilees had to be hidden. It had to be kept from us. Otherwise, we would learn that, wait a minute, the Torah, it's been hidden from us. I mean, this is prophesied. Okay? That had to be a sidelined book. Most people don't bother to read these apocryphal books because they're not considered true scripture, and yet they have nothing but truths in them which the biblical canon does not have. Okay? I do believe, dear remnant, that it is more than just symbolic that Jubilees 23 begins with Abraham. Of course, Abraham is the father of the Hebrews. However, Abraham's father, Terah, was a Baal worshiper. And Yahuwah destroyed Terah. Terah was burned alive by Yahuwah as a punishment for his occult beliefs. Abraham rejected and strove with his father about worshiping occult objects. He stood up to his father and strongly objected to the false religion. And so, dear remnant, those of us, the children, the descendants of the fathers who rejected Torah and embraced occultism, okay, those of us who truly seek Yahuwah and are committed to his commandments and to his Torah, we imitate Abraham, okay? And we seek to break away from the wicked ways of our fathers. The Torah is a salvation issue, and yet I believe Yahuwah will have mercy upon those who truly seek to follow him and his commandments as best they can in the context of a world where everything has been turned upside down, and it's virtually impossible or very difficult to make a substantial living and livelihood without breaking the feasts and the Sabbaths. because of the way in which the world is organized and structured. Okay? Um, and so he has mercy upon us. Okay? Those of us who do not reject the Torah. Okay? Now, those who reject the Torah because they don't like the idea of it or because they're not used to it, okay, that's a separate issue. Okay? But those of us who seek to truly make an effort to follow the Torah, to observe the Torah, all the Shabbats and feast days, okay, in a way that makes sense for our time, because there's a lot about following the ordinances and the Torah. There's manifold laws involved, as many people have pointed out to me. However, do the best you can. There are resources in or links to resources in the description box of this video, which give guidance on how Torah can be followed in our time, okay, in a way that makes sense for us, okay? But again, do your own reading. Read the first books of the covenant so that you have an understanding for yourself about the covenant that Yahuwah made with our ancestors in the time of Moses. Know it for yourself, dear remnant. Don't let other people tell you, but utilize the resources while you're in the process of digging deeper so you can at least start putting Torah into practice. Okay? Now, this brings me to the happy ending in Jubilees 23. The amazing blessings Yahuwah is going to shower upon his true children, those who have chosen to follow his ways and to return unto righteousness under his covenant. Even though our forefathers entered into this little season of Satan because they rejected the Torah. So they were left behind, okay, this is a negative sort of left behind. So they were left on earth when Yeshua went or returned to Holy City Jerusalem at the end of the millennial reign. Okay, so that really is the reason why this population was here, and we are their descendants. Okay, but Yahuwah made sure we would know the truth. He made sure that the apocryphal books would be available to us so that we would learn the truth. Okay, so all is not lost. Just because our forefathers were cursed, and of course the sins of the father pass on to the third and fourth generation of those who do not love him. Okay? So the curse followed us. However, by restoring our covenant relationship with Yahuwah, the curse is broken. Okay? So, again, this brings me to the happy ending in Jubilees 23. And the amazing blessings Yahuwah showers upon his true children, those who follow his ways, who return unto righteousness under his covenant. These verses are from the end of Jubilees 23, verses 26 to 32. And they apply to those of us who return to a covenant relationship with Yahuwah in these last days. So listen, this is just beautiful, okay? A beautiful ending. And in those days, which is in our days, dear remnant, the children shall begin to study the Torah. Is that not what we're doing, dear remnant? The children shall begin to study the Torah and to seek the commandments and to return to the path of righteousness. And the days shall begin to grow many and increase amongst those children of men, till their days draw nigh to 1,000 years, and to a greater number of years than before was the number of the days, dear remnant. And there shall be no old man, nor one who is satisfied with his days. for all shall be as children and youths, and all their days they shall complete and live in peace. Okay? And in joy. And there shall be no Satan, nor any evil destroyer, for all their days shall be days of blessing and healing. Okay, and so again, all their days shall be days of blessing and healing. And at that time, Yahuwah will heal his servants, and they shall rise up and see great peace, and drive out their adversaries. And the righteous shall see and be thankful, and rejoice with joy forever and ever, and shall see all their judgments and all their curses on their enemies. And their bones shall rest in the earth, and their ruachoth shall have much joy. And they shall know that it is Yahweh who executes judgment and shows mercy to hundreds and thousands and to all that love him. And do you, Moshe, write down these words, for thus they are written, and they record them on the heavenly tablets for a testimony for the generations forever. And there it is written, for the generations forever. The covenant relationship was established by Yahuwah for the generations forever, and Christians are not exempt. Okay? We are under judgment for not following the Torah. No exemptions, okay? Isn't that a most beautiful ending, dear remnant? Embrace the Torah with all your heart. It is the way back to our Adonai Yahweh. We have entered into the age of righteousness, and righteousness is budding even now as I speak. And it's budding. It's a little flower, and slowly the petals are coming to life and are unfolding, and will someday just be most beautiful, because righteousness will reign again. It's starting small, dear remnant. Stay tuned. There is more to come from Yahuwah as we move into this age of righteousness. Okay? This is a very special message to those of you who are contemplating but are unsure of the Torah. Simply move forward with the Torah with all your heart. Read and reread Jubilees chapter 23. It's about the salvation issue of the Torah. Okay? Take the time to learn the Torah step by step and follow and practice it the best you can. We have been lost children. So remember, Yahweh is loving and patient with us. Again, links to Torah resources are in the description box of this and all my videos. The blessings in store for those who in our hearts truly follow Torah and are redeemed by Yeshua HaMashiach are magnificent. Yahweh seeks to restore us and exceed in us the physical and spiritual well-being of Adam, who lived to nearly 1,000 years of age. For it is written in Jubilees 23 verse 27, and the days shall begin to grow many and increase amongst those children of men, till their days draw nigh to 1,000 years, and to a greater number of years than before was the number of days. I believe this means that we may possibly even have a greater number of years than the generations before the flood. And as our years extend to 1,000 years or more, there shall be no more Satan, because Satan's fate is to be cast into the lake of fire. The fact that Jubilees 23 verse 29 prophesies there will be no more Satan is a timestamp for the very end of time. It does not say Satan is bound. Okay? Satan was bound before the millennial reign. Now we are entering into the principate of Mashiach, the very end, the age of righteousness. And in this time there will be no more Satan. So this prophecy is clearly for the very end of time. And Jubilees verse 23, 26 to 32 must be describing the transition to the new earth, which is brought about by the children turning back unto righteousness and to the Torah, dear remnant. So do so with all your heart. Okay? So I believe the time when our years begin to extend has already begun. Dear remnant, we are in the stage when the age of righteousness, as I said, is budding. It is beginning in an unobtrusive way. How did Mashiach come when he came, his first coming? As a baby, born in a stable, okay, where there were animals, okay, not in a palace. No one knew that Mashiach had come, except that a star was above the stable where he was born. And 3 kings who knew of the message in their heart that Mashiach had come, they went to see him. Okay? This is the style of Mashiach, dear remnant. Quiet, unobtrusive, perceived and discerned by those who truly seek the truth. So be one of those, dear remnant. As Yeshua said, beginnings are as a tiny mustard seed, silent and unseen, and even doubted by many who see only evil all around us. I mean, there's a lot of evil around us still, dear remnant. Things aren't going to change overnight. But watch for the signs. I see signs already in my life, dear remnant. Beautiful signs. It's just a blessing, dear remnant. Look at your lives. Look at those around you. As you deepen your faith and follow Torah, you will start to see signs of this amazing, unobtrusive change, which is just being generated from the very foundations of reality. Okay? Satan is not yet in the lake of fire, so he is putting up a fight. And he still has an agenda to beat Yahuwah. He hasn't given up. But then as our faith strengthens, righteousness begins to take over the world. Again, it starts as a tiny mustard seed. Then it grows until it becomes the biggest tree of all, just like Yeshua's parable of the mustard seed. I believe that during the years when our ages extend to 1,000 years in this unfolding age of righteousness, the new earth will also begin at some point, okay? There may be a time when those of us who receive this blessing of extended life may be moved to a holding place for a time, and this would be the wheat being gathered into the barn, possibly for a 40-year waiting period, while the earth is cleansed and restored. Okay? So before the gathering into the barn, we will still be here amongst the tares. But it is prophesied that as we turn to righteousness and unto Torah, we will be able to drive out our adversaries. Okay? We'll be able to drive away our enemies. And we will be able to witness our judgments and curses upon our enemies. And we will be joyful and rejoice with joy forever. Forever, dear remnant. This clearly means, dear remnant, that we will be given the power to judge and curse our enemies. And so, as Enoch prophesied, the wicked are to be removed and the righteous will inherit the earth. And as Jubilees tells us at the end of the many years of life, the 1,000 years, our bones will rest in the earth after we have lived 1,000 years again. And our Ruach or spirit continues to have much joy as we then move to our domain in the new heaven. I pray for each and every one of you, dear remnant, to wholeheartedly embrace the Torah, for it is the key to restoring our covenant relationship with our Yahuah Adonai, whom we love and praise and worship. I do pray that you who have been following my channel have been making progress in learning and observing the commandments, ordinances, and Yahuwah's Torah in a manner that is reasonable for our time. Again, I've provided links to resources to help you with your journey of turning back to righteousness. As I've said before, please do not give up on observing Torah, even if you only manage to accomplish a work in progress, because our circumstances in these last days makes it a challenge indeed to follow the Torah. However, do your best and don't make weak excuses. Let it not be about money, for Yahuwah will provide. He'll make a way when there is no way. In the little season of Satan, we as Christians were deceived into believing that we only had to confess our faith in the redeeming blood of Yeshua in order to be saved. We were taught that it was okay to disregard the law, the feasts and Shabbats, okay, and the Torah, and to think of them as merely old traditional Jewish practices. But we know the truth now. Okay, so stay the course, dear remnant, and observe the Torah. I love you all in Yeshua. See you next time. Amen and hallelujah.